Welcome, everybody. I've been getting a lot of messages, so if you have any questions, be sure to message me. I hope you're getting more confidence in working with your tarot and moving forward. It's partly intuitive, it's partly knowing some of the basic symbols and meanings, and then learning, practicing, seeing how the energy flows together of the various cards. That's why I did those 3-card pulls for you on Tuesday, and I hope that those were helpful. So today we're going to be working with 3 new cards, and they all fit together under the theme of divine action. And in tarot, action tends to be considered masculine energy, and female energy is the receptive energy. So when you see the cards in the major arcana, it helps you to kind of understand where they're going if you ask yourself, is this card about action? Or is this a card about receptivity? Because there's a balance throughout the cards in the major arcana. The first major arcana card that fits into this inspired action trio is the Magician. Remember last time we started with the Fool, which is numbered at 0 because it's almost set outside the major arcana. The next card, 1, is the Magician, and it falls under divine action. So when you look at the Magician, you see somebody who is a conduit. He's learning that divine energy can be channeled through him, fulfill and manifest his intentions. And you'll see the white is purity, and then the red is that will and determination, that human spirit. And there are symbols of the 4 elements of creation sitting out on the table. Now, there are some people who like to hypothesize that the 4 elements on the table are what are really in the little knapsack that the Fool carries with him. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's a hypothesis. That's up to you. You will note there is an infinity sign over the Magician's head, and that shows unlimited power, potential, and around his body as a belt is the, I'm trying to think of how you say this, Ouroboros. That might not be correct, but it's the symbol of the snake. And it's the snake where the snake is biting his own tail. And so there's no real beginning, no real end. And it's another symbol of that infinite potential. And some people think the flowers are connected to show that he is part of nature. That could be. Now, he corresponds to the sign of Mercury because he's about messages and he's about communication. Basically, the divine is able to channel and communicate through the Magician, as above, so below, as we mentioned last time, and work its energy through him upon the earth. But it all corresponds to the will of the Magician. He's a creator. The main words that I put on here are willpower and confidence. Manifestation. This is a card of creation and manifestation. Those are the key words that I put. I also put on there unlimited potential. Now, it's really interesting because the early cards pictured the Magician in a very different way. At card 1, he was still the kind of magician that pulls rabbits out of hats originally. A little bit of a trickster, going on confidence, personal power. But the card has changed over time, and it's more about the awakening you experience as the Fool begins that journey. You start awakening to the potential inside yourself. So when this shows up in a reading, it's telling you to take inspired action. It's an inspired action card. It is telling you, step out, have faith in yourself, and allow universe to work through you. And it takes a lot of self-confidence. And it's also calling you, telling you, you're starting a particular path. You're on a spiritual path. So when this shows up in a reading, I know that person has begun experiencing that spiritual calling. They just need the self-confidence to step forward and answer the call. So that's the Magician. The next card in this trio of divine action cards is a really interesting one, and it's Major Arcana number 4. This is the Emperor card. And the Emperor card, not surprisingly, corresponds to the zodiac sign of Aries. And you can see the rams that are a reminder of the kind of passion and power the Emperor has. And you see the flames around him. He is very self-deterministic. It's all about, as I wrote on here, personal power is a key word. Wisdom is a key word. His beard shows his maturity and his wisdom. Add the word passion. There is a lot of passion. That's one of the key words I particularly use with this. And I also add tradition, because I find when this card appears in a reading, usually there's a male involved in the reading who is very traditional, very strict, is benevolent, has strong values, but at the same time has this strong deterministic stance that he's right. And another thing the Emperor values, and I think I put that as a keyword on here, but the number 4, stability. He likes things stable. But if that stability or his values are threatened anyway, the benign Emperor has this armor peeking out from underneath the robe. And I will tell you, you do not rile the Emperor up. He will fight for what he believes in. So when this is in a reading, like I said, there's often a very strong personality. It's somebody who, if it's taken too far, can actually be an impediment to what the person is trying to achieve and what we're hoping the reading shows. He can almost sometimes be a block to the energy that the person is trying to manifest in a reading. A lot of times in love readings, this card shows up, and it shows a man who's rather intractable, stubborn, and has a bit of a temper. But on the other side, he can also be the classic, positive, doing what he thinks is best for everybody, a very strong paternal figure, very strong paternal figure. And it's somebody who, if you agree with their values, you can really admire how much they embody what they preach. There's no hypocrisy, no hypocrisy. The Emperor is the Emperor. What you see is what you get. So, very interesting, stereotypical male leadership energy. And very interesting when it shows up in a reading. The last card in the trio of 3 cards that come under divine action is really the Chariot. Now, the Chariot is also inspired action, and it's will and determination. When the Chariot shows up in a reading, things are about to start moving quickly, very quickly. And the 2 Sphinx, the white and the black, are telling you, you better have your goal in mind, you better be thinking up a plan, and you better be able to assert leadership and control. Leadership's one of the key words, because you have the reins and you need those Sphinx to work together. Because once this Chariot takes off and picks up speed, if you do not have those Sphinx working together, you're going to wreck. So people ask if there's a meaning to the Sphinx other than the black and white color. Not really. Different people come up. They come up with theories about that, but originally they didn't have Sphinx, and Chariots were pulled by Sphinx. Some people look to the myth of, here I go again, butchering a word, Sirius rising or triumphing, but it isn't, because that would be something different. It wouldn't be Sphinx. So there's a little bit of a mystery for you why we have the Sphinx. But when this shows up in a reading, things are really going to take off for somebody. And it really calls for them to step into that leadership role. And the one thing all of these cards have in common by inspired action, all of them in a sense are taking action based on how they interpret the energy of the divine working through them. And that's really key. It softens the emperor too when you think of him in that way. And you can see behind him, where is it? It's very small, but in the background, there is that stream, that river of universal wisdom, compassion, whatever you want to call it, is present. Here, the stream is not present, but the element of water is in the elements that are on the table. And with the chariot, there's a fairly big stream with a pretty good flow right behind the chariot. So we can see these cards all do have that divine connection to them. So it's rather interesting when these cards show up. Sometimes they represent a strong male energy in a reading, but often they're calling you, whomever you're reading for, to step up, determine how they're being called by the universe, and then to move forward with strong will and determination in that direction. And in all of these cards, there's also, maybe less arguably in the Magician, but leadership, very much true for the Emperor. He's really embodying values, structure, stability that he believes is divine, and he's divinely appointed to care for that and to defend that. And the chariot, very much, very strong, also leadership role. It's less defined. Here is much more a charismatic leader. I guess I should add that in. With the chariot, you're much more called to be a charismatic leader. You want people to buy into your plan. Where the emperor has in some way inherited the buy-in, or, his position where he expects people to follow along. So these cards are cards that I would suggest this week that you choose this group where we're really looking at what it means to take divine or inspired action. What does that mean in each of the cards? They're similar and they're different. And how do you see that play out in daily life? As you meditate on the cards, can you find examples of each of these people? And what does it mean if it's taken to excess? I don't read reversals because each card already has inherent in it. What would happen if that energy were blocked or taken to an extreme? Because we've all seen this happen with various religious leaders, political leaders, spiritual people. What does that look like? So I invite you to, like I said, work with these cards a little bit, really start to understand their meaning and their energy. And by next week, by next Thursday, you will have 6 cards under your belt, so to speak, where you really understand the energy. I will be back on Tuesday, and I will be teaching a slightly different spread that I really think gives a little more depth than I was able to do with the readings with the 3 cards. And I think you'll see the difference. How when you have more cards, it's actually easier to read. So continue working with your cards. Focus on divine action. Last time we looked at expansiveness, and this time we're looking at divine action, inspired action, which is the masculine energy in the tarot. And I will post in my feed all the correspondences that I have for these 3 cards. And go ahead and you determine what you think the keywords are for you regarding these cards. Just really get a feel for that energy, and don't be afraid to come up with them. If you haven't already, go to my shop and download the tarot journal that's there, so you can make a page for each card where you can write down more about your thoughts and meditations on each card and kind of create your own little booklet. And there's also a tarot book on there as well with a cheat sheet with keywords. So those 2 things I recommend that you download as we go through these together. So have a nice rest of your week and happy, joyful new moon in Leo tonight. Thank you.